Oh, one fine winter's morning our horns loud did blow. To the fields around Tass our huntsmen did go, to meet those fine sports from around Keady town. None liked this sport better than the boys from me down. Oh, when we arrived they were all waiting there. We took to the fields in search of a hare. 'Twas not very long to someone give a cheer. Over brae, hill and valley, a hare she did steer.
My father, Peter McCann, was born and reared in Lagan outside Keady, and with his brother John was a huntsman from an early age. In the 20s and 30s, many farmers kept a hound, and he learnt the trade from older huntsmen such as Charlie O'Donnell, Pat Smith, Pat O'Hara, Robbie Leyburn, and the Rooney brothers from Sharkey's Rocks. With those of us roughly similar age, Jack and Barney Connolly, Harry McKeown, Ned Hughes, Andy Conaway, Mick and Tom Cassidy, they had a good pack in Lagan. He married Margaret Powell and came to live in 15 Chapel Street, Keady in 1937, keeping his hounds still in Lagan. My mother kept a few hens in the backyard and garden, and there was no place for his hounds. But sometime in the early 40s my mother sold the hens, which had done their bit for the war effort, and they were replaced by a harrier hound. For the next 25 years there was a succession of hounds in Chapel Street, initially at number 15 and later in the mid-50s next door at number 17, with names such as Chorus, Bloomer, Charmer, and even a Vengeance. My father preferred bitches. In the early 50s, as well as the Lagan pack, there was a sizable pack on the Mountaineer Road, with Lucy's James McCooey, Frank McKee, Jerry McKee, Francie Gollagy and Paddy Bone as active huntsmen. To the east of Keady was the remains of the Lower Darkley and Tacit Club, immortalised in the famous ballad The Greenmore Hare, with Owen McMahon as boss, together with James McCreish, Frank O'Hare, Dan Wilson, Gerard Cassidy, Hughie McKernan and Amy Cardle. There was now a new generation of Tassa huntsmen, including Joe McCann, Pat Digby, John King, Jim McWalters, with Greenmore represented by Jim Haughey, Jim McClelland, Danny Smith and Eugene McCarthy.
On the 17th of March, man, when the days they were long, a good day's devotion we composed a song. Oh, to go out o'er the man of war when the morning was clear. Oh, we started the hunt, men, for to finish the year. Tom Foxy come o'er with his dogs in for cry, and he baits every voice from the Crimmery to Malloy. And the cry of his dogs told him she was still there, and if I get into rump, boys, well, her life I'll not spare.
When my father came to live in Keady in the late 30s, he would have known all these huntsmen from surrounding packs. While the Keady pack generally hunted separately on Sunday and during the week, there was the tradition of set hunts, where the trug travelled to or entertained neighbouring hunts, usually on Saturday, and later retiring to a local pub, where they were made more than welcome, as they usually stayed to closing time, or later, entertaining each other and keeping alive local ballads. A new generation of huntsmen was replacing those who had carried on the tradition during the 20s and 30s, such as Robert McLeanan, Paddy Cassidy, Tommy O'Hare, Hughie Smith, Shaney Burns and Pat Barney Hughes. The Acadian District Hunt Club was now organised on a formal basis, with a president, chairman, secretary, treasurer and committee, and met monthly to arrange a programme of hunts home and away. In the late 1950s, the committee was organised around Owen Me, Barney Arthurs, Peter Cullen, Billy Quinn, Paddy Toner, Jerry Moan, Peter McCann, Jim Smith and Frank O'Hare from Cashel. With the prompting of Barney Arthurs during the early 60s, a new generation of huntsmen was encouraged, with Peter Mee, Tommy Joe Dillon, Jimmy O'Hagan, Paddy Mackey, Frank McCann, Patsy Casey, Seamus Toner, Jimmy Gorman, Patsy McCann, Colin Moan, Eugene MacDonald, Charlie John Donnelly, Dan Murray, Patsy Cassidy, Frank Slavin, Jim Nappy Connolly, Mickey Burke, Packy Connolly, Pat Burke, Pat and James MacDonald, Jack Gallagher were added to the list. Keady and District never again had as many hounds and huntsmen. The Lagan and Mountaineer Road packs were still largely independent. In the early 50s, transport was still a problem, and the UTA bus was often called to carry men and dogs to set hunts in such places as Armagh, Benburb, Moy, Rich Hill, Laurel Vale, Middletown, with pick-up points at Keady Monument and Tassa Bridge, and using the same mode of transport to one of the traditional Christmas hunts, which was often held in Blaney, where Benny Malone and the famous Gunnar Brady were the hosts. In those days, the Keady hounds were usually hunted 3 days a week. Those who had the motto, "Never let work interfere with their pleasure," hunted on Wednesday, usually near the town. Keady was still relatively small, and hares were to be found close to the town, and were named according to where they were found. There was the church hare, the convent hare, the graveyard hare, and when a new cinema was built on Keady Hill, there was even the picture house hare. Set hunts were held on Saturday, home or away. In those days, pubs legally did not open on Sunday, and Pisgah Hill, Thrasher Hill, and the Clump were often starting points. Sunday hunts tended to go to Tullyglush, where Gordy Wallace enjoyed to hunt, Lower Darkley, Grainmore, Killafaddy, New Holland, and Drumbunyan. In the 60s, 2 men having married local girls came to live in Keady, and who were to play a big part on the hunting fields for the next 30 years. Pat Fox Hughes came from Moy, and from a family of huntsmen, while Jim Duffy from Ballabay, outside Blaney, grew up surrounded by huntsmen. Pat strengthened ties with Tyrone packs, while Jim was a link to the many huntsmen around Blaney and Ballabay. These were valuable contacts, as during the 70s the hunting territory around Keady was gradually being reduced due to the increase in road traffic and especially the explosion in sheep numbers in certain areas. The old order was passing on with the death of Peter McCann, Barney Arthurs, Jerry Moan, all too young, and the future of the club passed into the hands of Jim McClellan, Pat Digby, Patsy Cassidy, Jim Duffy, Peter Mee, with Owen Mee as president. New talent was appearing on the scene, not in the numbers as before, but Sean Digby, Danny Smith, Sean King would prove their worth in years to come.
But I blame Owen McMacken for bringing them here. He's been at the same caper for many a year. For Saturday or Sunday, he never gives o'er, with a strange pack of hounds on the hills of Grainmore.